right, yep, Wendy's on point.
We're ready to go. Let's go ahead and let everyone in. Yeah. Okay.
Sounds great.
I'm looking at everyone. All right. No one's saying otherwise. Start us up.
All right. Well, welcome in, everyone. Thank you for being here this evening for the PCEF committee meeting of May 13th from 6 to 7:30 this evening. Next slide, please. So we have virtual meetings every month. The committee meetings are open to the public, and the public is invited to comment at around 6:05. The chat box is open for introductions and for noting public comment interest. At other times, it is chat just between the facilitator and staff. Please raise your hand electronically, like Gail is doing right at the moment, in order to be acknowledged, especially if you are part of the community and wanting to give comment. We'll ask for raised hands. The video is on and being recorded. Your microphones are muted and captioning is available. Next slide, please. So our agenda this evening, welcomes and introductions. We'll have public comment. Then we will, because we do not have quorum this evening, we'll have our briefing, then program updates, city budget discussion. We may or may not take a break, and then we will have our meeting closure. We'll have a conversation about appointment to the evaluation subcommittee, but we cannot take action on that this evening. So next slide, please. Introductions. I would love to be able to introduce everyone on the committee. My name is Dr. Christine Moses. I use she, her pronouns, and I am your facilitator this evening. I'd like to toss it over to Tracy, our co-chair. Tracy?
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Moses, and good evening, everyone. I'm Tracy Scott, co-chair of the PCEF committee, and let me see, I'd like to toss it over to Robin.
Good evening, Robin Wang, PCEF committee member. Happy to be here. And Megan, you changed your name.
That's why I tried to put both in there, Robin. Everybody,
Meg, confuse me more.
It's my goal, Robin. Hi all, Megan, she, her pronouns, and committee member. Nice to be here. How about you, Andre?
Wonderful, thank you so much. Andre Lightsey Walker, use he, him pronouns, PCEF committee member. And I'm looking.
You may be the last one.
Okay, wonderful.
Yep, go right ahead, Sam. Welcome
All right,
in.
good evening, everyone. It's good to see you all here. Sam Barrasso, he, him pronouns, program manager for the PCEF program, and I'll send it to James as I know he'll be chatting a little bit this evening.
Yeah, good to be with you all. James Valdez, he, him, and PCEF staff. I'm not sure who else. That might be it for this evening.
Yes, thank you so very much. All right, next slide, please. So as we do at this meeting, we're going to just take a couple of seconds here to do some centering. I invite you to close your eyes or to gaze softly down, or maybe out the window, whatever you prefer. I'm just inviting us to center ourselves, to breathe deeply, and to be able to be present in our bodies as we move through this meeting. So close your eyes if you prefer. Feel your feet firmly planted on the floor. And then feel the chair on your legs, holding up your legs, supporting your legs, as well as supporting your low back. And I invite you to do box breath. We're going to breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4, and hold for 4. This helps us get out of fight or flight and to come into our bodies and be centered. So I'm going to count us through the first one, and then the next 2 after that are on your own. Breathe in, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4, breathe out, 2, 3, 4, hold, 2, 3, 4. The next 2 breaths are on your own. And gently open your eyes when you're done. Big stretch up. Yes. At the end of the day, we are energized and we are present. So thank you so very much. Next slide, please. Public comment. Yes, yes, yes. And I see, Keith, I see your hand up. So I'll call on you first. Please indicate your interest by providing public comment, by raising your hand, and indicate your interest through the Zoom chat function. For those joining the meeting by phone, please enter *9 on your phone to indicate your interest in providing public comment. Please limit your comments to 3 minutes. Welcome in, Keith.
Thank you, Dr. Moses. Can everybody hear me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, hello, my name is Keith Dallenbach. Thank you very much for the opportunity to provide testimony tonight on the PCEF bike e-rebate program. I live in Northeast Portland. I submitted a letter to editor 1 month and a day ago that was published in the Oregonian. And I just want to quickly read that. Add conventional bikes to the Portland rebate program. The city of Portland recently announced an innovative $20 million e-bike rebate program for qualified residents. The program's stated goals include reducing carbon emissions, lowering economic barriers for low and moderate income citizens, and making Portland more resilient to climate change. These are definitely admirable goals. As a citizen who regularly bikes 17 miles one way across town to work in Beaverton and logs 3,000 commuting miles annually, I'm a big fan of getting as many people out of vehicles and onto bicycles as possible. Yet e-bikes consume electricity generated by sources that have carbon footprints, including hydroelectric dams, natural gas, coal, and solar. On the other hand, conventional human-powered bicycles consume no electricity after their creation and require no carbon emissions to operate. Perhaps even more importantly, they cost about a third of comparable e-bikes and offer lower maintenance costs. The goals of the city's rebates are satisfied by conventional bikes, yet they are given short shrift. Why restrict rebates to e-bikes? Does the city think low and moderate income citizens are unable to ride conventional bicycles? Why miss the chance to expand the number of bicycles by casting a wider net? Given the program's goals, it is incongruent to not include conventional bicycles. With the program's 3-year time horizon, it should be updated now to include them. And that's the end of the letter to editor. I have had positive feedback from the offices of Mayor Wilson and 3 of the councilors, Novick, Lane, and Avalos, as well as the Portland Bicycle Advisory Committee. The e-bike rebate program, I believe, should be included to include conventional bicycles. It would not change the process at all. It would just be expanded to include something that would help the city meet the PCEF goals that were identified. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Keith. Tracy, as our chair, is there anything that you would like to say?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you so much for your comments, Keith. I believe we may have received a copy of your letter in our last packet, so thank you so much. We did get a chance to review that, and we did have a brief discussion on it. It seems really interesting. I'd love for the staff to be able to comment, and certainly my other committee compatriots here that are really bike advocates. I'd love to know your thoughts on this, particularly Andre, but certainly Megan as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Happy to jump in. Thank you, Tracy. And Keith, thank you so much for that statement. I joined PCEF following the creation of that rebate program. My understanding is that the bigger barrier is to electric bicycles than there is to sort of acoustic bicycles, as I call them. But I absolutely agree that if the primary goal is reducing carbon emissions, we should be strategic about getting people on bikes, no matter how those bikes are powered. And so I think that's a conversation that the PCEF committee would absolutely be interested in continuing. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Andre. James, I'm going to go to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, and thank you, Keith, for your comments. I'll just contextually maybe make a few comments in response, just noting that, and I think you brought this up, the cost of ownership or the need in terms of offsetting costs for an acoustic or a biologically powered bike is much lower. And so generally that isn't as much of a barrier for people purchasing bicycles out in the market. We have actually in the past funded grants with nonprofits focused on distribution of bicycles. And so really that opportunity for e-bikes to offset longer distance travel is something that seemed well supported as we developed the program, both looking at data and information from folks at PSU, the Transportation Research Education Center, as well as parallel programs that had been run in California, Denver, because we were not the first jurisdiction to launch an e-bike rebate program. And generally, those programs and the research is finding that for people who are not already cyclists, the opportunity to have an e-bike really does displace longer distance vehicle trips. And so that was one of the primary reasons why the e-bike program and rebate was designed the way it was, to make that accessible for people who might not already be cyclists as well.
Thank you so much, James. So I think we should go ahead and move on and say thank you, Keith, for your question. Charisse.
Can I ask, is there any next step that PCEF will be considering? I appreciate the feedback. I still
Keith, I
stand
appreciate it.
behind the position that I have, that this would increase the number of people that can offset carbon emissions. Just full stop. And is there going to be any other additional comment, any other additional study that'll be done for this to respond to my feedback?
We have an annual amendment process where we look at all our programs and consider what's going well, where there are opportunities to improvement. We will take that into account as we go through our annual amendment process for our common investment plan. So it'll certainly be a discussion we continue, but that's
When will that be?
That's going to take place over the course of summer and fall.
Thank you.
Thank you both very much. Welcome in, Charisse.
Hi there. Good to see you all. My name is Charisse Bach. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm the Climate Policy Director at 350 PDX, which is a nonprofit here in Portland that works on climate and environmental justice issues. And we were one of the initial groups that helped with getting PCEF on the ballot and have really tried to be strong supporters of PCEF through the years. So glad to be with you all, and thank you to the PCEF committee and PCEF staff for all the hard work that you're doing to make PCEF successful and do the amazing things that you're doing. So appreciate all of your great work. I wanted to comment tonight about the use of PCEF in the budget and just let you all know that we're concerned about the diversions of PCEF in the climate investment program in the mayor's budget to things that don't seem to relate to the PCEF goals. So along with 13 other organizations who are part of the Friends of PCEF Coalition, we sent a letter to City Council on Monday sharing our concerns. We also shared a letter just from us, and 350 PDX also signed on to a letter from the Shade Equity Coalition with concerns about the cut of 2 PCEF funded positions from SP8 working on the equitable tree canopy and 12 PCEF funded positions in permitting and development working on tree permitting under SP34. So I realize I should have sent those to you all before this meeting, but I can do that after the meeting. And so you can see what our detailed concerns are. But overall, we're opposing this process of the mayor claiming these funds to be able to be used for the general fund when they really need to go through the appropriate process through the PCEF committee to do a climate investment plan adjustment if the PCEF committee and staff agree that these are valid uses of PCEF money. So we just finished up that update process and now all of these changes are being suggested. So we oppose the mayor's proposal to divert PCEF funds to Portland Solutions and PMO and the impact reduction program. These don't seem to relate to PCEF's goals. And it sounds like they're using funds from the 5th year of the PCEF CIP to plug this year's budget gaps. So that means that we're going to have more problems down the road with the budget. We appreciate that the matter of the interest is being brought up here. We definitely think it needs to be brought to you all before it is proposed. So you all can make your decision about that. But I do think it needs to be a decision made year to year rather than just assumed. And we're very concerned that it seems unclear as to where the funding is going for those urban forestry and tree permitting jobs. There just seems to be a lot of obfuscation about where money is coming from and how it is being moved around in the budget. So we would appreciate if you all can continue to advocate to make sure that the changes to PCEF are brought through your committee and that this is a transparent process where we can all see exactly which money is being moved from which strategic program to what other thing so that we can, as a community, evaluate whether this meets the goals of PCEF or not. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Charisse. Tracy?
Thank you so much, Charisse. I do appreciate the feedback you representing, 350 PDX and certainly those at Friends of PCEF to give us something to really consider. I mean, these are things we observed as well. We will take this under advisement as we continue, reviewing the budget and making recommendations on the CIP amendment process later this year. So I do want to offer space to any of the committee members who may also want to share their thoughts on this. I open the floor to Robin, Megan, Andre. Any thoughts, feedback here?
Yeah, Robin here. So real quick, just thank you for your comments. Please do send us a copy of those letters. Sometimes it takes its time to make it to us. So we would greatly appreciate it so that we kind of know what discussions are happening. Thank you.
Yeah, and I'll just add, in addition to send the letter, I think we'll be hearing an update from staff. We did ask a lot of these same questions at our last meeting, and I know staff was going to try to track down some answers for us. So stay tuned to what we hear about some of these questions tonight.
Thank you. All right. Any other public comment this evening? Okay, seeing none, I think we should go on, and may I have next slide, please? We are not approving the meeting minutes because we don't have quorum, so next slide, please. Proposed code amendment to allow use of PCEF interest for fiscal year 26-27. So I see that Ruth Levine is here. And Sam, would you like to tee up this topic?
Yep, and thank you. Before I turn over to Director Levine from the City Budget Office, I just want to remind folks that, as part of the code, whenever there's code amendments that are proposed, the city is required to come and brief the committee. And so that's what's happening here. Director Levine will talk you through the proposed code amendment to allow the use of PCEF interest for the upcoming budget year. And with that, I'll turn it over. We've really just got one slide here, but I'll turn it over to Director Levine.
Thank you.
Great. Thank you. It's nice to virtually meet the committee members, and thanks for having me. I'm Ruth Levine, she, her pronouns, and I'm the director of the City Budget Office. So I am, as Sam said, here to talk to you about the transfer of the interest that was included in the budget and that sort of attendant ordinance that will go before City Council next week. They'll take it up on Monday, the 18th, and expect them to vote on it to hear testimony on the 18th, and they won't vote on it next week because it will be the first reading of a non-emergency ordinance, so it will go to a second reading on May 27th, is my understanding. So the interest transfer of that amount, about $27 million, was included in the proposed budget, and it's the amount of interest that accrued in the PCEF fund in fiscal year 24-25, and it was included as one of the solutions to help close a roughly $170 million budget gap in the general fund. That gap is a combination of a couple of different factors. The key ones are stagnating revenues. In particular, we took a pretty substantial hit in our business license tax revenue as a result of federal tax law changes from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, which reduced businesses' tax liability, and that affects the city as well. And so that was kind of one big piece of it. Another big piece of it is rising costs above inflation, including things like health benefit costs, which increased a lot or are increasing a lot in the budget year, and other factors. And so, as in the previous 2 fiscal years, this transfer was included in the budget, and it's, again, the amount that was from the last fiscal year that closed, so in this case 24-25, so it's the actual amount, not a projection. This amount is in addition to revenue that's projected that supports what's in the climate investment plan. And it accumulates in the fund as a result of, obviously there's sort of more of it, and part of that is because of higher interest rates, and then part of it is due to the fund balance in the fund, so it accumulates there. And so it's sort of similar mechanism to what happened in prior years. It's treated as one-time revenue. Yes, thank you. There's the proposed code amendment that's filed. You can see it on the council clerk's website. I think that's all I have to say. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you so much, Director. Any questions? Yes, Megan.
Thanks. And my question may be for you, Ruth, but also it may be for PCEF staff. And some of it's just to bring our committee members like all on the same page, because we have a changing cast of committee members just based on term length and et cetera. So I don't recall which committee members were here last time that this came up. So I think it would just be helpful to hear what our legal counsel and like staff direction was. And the last time I think we were told something like, in general, the interest is not considered within the PCEF committee's purview and et cetera. And so like that has long been outside of and that is how that's handled by the Children's Levy and other similar funds, I believe. So I could just use a reminder about that context, and I suspect my committee members could use some similar, and the public that's listening in could just use some reminder context about the interest and why this diversion is maybe a different situation than diverting regular funds. That's the main question. And then just another comment is I appreciate you coming and talking to us. And I wonder if we'll also hear from the other lead staff that are connected to some of the other proposed budget changes. So that's maybe, those questions might both be for staff and not you, Ruth. I'm not sure.
Yes, Sam, do you want to take those, either of those?
Yeah, I'll just start with just at a top level. What I'll say is just as a reminder, this is a treatment of the interest in this instance as different from the underlying clean energy surcharge revenues, which are focused on program administration as well as implementation of the climate investment plan. And so, like to your point, that is correct. There is a different treatment here of the interest. Without this, I think it goes without saying that the interest would roll into the fund, but here in this instance, it's and this amendment, as noted here, as it reads, it is an additional one time. So it isn't in the perpetuity, but it is a code amendment, another one time in order to facilitate that transfer of that interest over to the general fund.
Any other
Thank you.
questions, Meg?
Well, that answers that one. And then Sam, do you know, so in terms of our code requiring that there be a presentation to us about code changes, does that apply to the other budget?
I'll certainly talk about that later. No, it in this instance, because it's specifically, this is a code amendment, whereas in the others, and we'll get to there when we talk about the budget, it is really about other bureaus and other teams administering elements of the climate investment plan through other entities. And so because those are existing climate investment plan programs, and even then it's not a code amendment, even if it was, for instance, a different programming, it wouldn't sit as a code amendment. So the same sort of requirement wouldn't apply. But we'll talk about those here in a couple of slides. We'll give a little space, at least for you all to have that discussion.
Okay, thanks for answering both those. And yeah, if Tracy, Andre, I'm not sure if you were here last time, so curious if you all.
Yeah,
Tracy, you were. Yes.
I was here. It was within just a few months of when I joined, but it certainly, made sense as it was described to me at that time. And certainly this is reflecting a continuation of that. I think my question at the time, again, knowing that it is not going into perpetuity, it has an opportunity to sunset at some point, I would imagine, when there's a better way to make up the difference within the city budgets. Certainly I realize that's not near term. And then, certainly as we continue to expend the monies that we do have control over, we may be able to subsume these dollars within our broader budget and be able to serve more Portlanders with clean energy solutions. So for today, I understand it's an amendment. I don't think, Sam, we're asked to vote or approve. This is for informed purposes, I would imagine.
The requirement by code, at least, is certainly to inform you all. And I saw Andre's hand up, but I'll just validate. The requirement, yes, by code is to make sure that you all are informed of any amendments. As it reads and as it's structured, it does require proactive action from the city if the city would and that's what you're seeing here, proactive action in order to do this. If this was approached again next year, the same sort of action would have to be approached. So in that way, just to acknowledge, it isn't set up as an action that would be taken into perpetuity. And the reality is we have been in a substantial mode of startup and scale up, and we can certainly talk about that, but there is a point where this won't be the case just because our fund balance won't be as large. It's going to still take us a minute to get there where we wind that down. But so this opportunity also will not necessarily be in play as we get a couple more years out. It'll start to wind down.
Thank you, Sam. Andre?
Yes, thank you so much. I think for me, the thing that's emerging is just the potential for establishing some sort of threshold. I could see this going on infinitely, you know, oh, 25, 26, 26, 27, 28, 29, 28, you know? And so like I just um, no problems, no emotions around it, but I just I'm just bringing up what's happening or what the feelings I'm feeling in this moment. Is just some sort of systematic approach to addressing so that next year I'm not looking at a slash through 26, 20, 27, asking for 28, 29, perhaps, or like that there's been some discussion that makes it feel like there's some sort of like shift or change or resolution. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Yeah. Andre, I want to just name, I hear you. I hear what you're getting, and I think certainly, this is your colleagues and others have been around this conversation now. This will be their third time sort of seeing this conversation playing out. And so as Director Levine shared, I know that this is a unique moment. It's a unique moment in time more broadly, obviously not just this fiscal year, certainly played out last fiscal year. And I suspect that sort of being in these challenging moments it's probably going to take a bit longer to get out of that. And so I think the question you're raising is a valid one. I think that's one for the discuss and understand sort of the opportunity cost that's materializing in the future as we go forward.
Thank you.
Director Ruth, any comment?
I was just going to say, I think Sam and I are going to be, and staff are going to be working really closely together this summer as we kind of are reviewing the spending down of the PCEF fund balance and projections and the like. So I imagine there'll be an opportunity to come back and maybe jointly discuss some of the work after we conclude that. I don't know. I don't want to offer you up, Sam, but just I imagine there'll be more of an opportunity in this next year, but hopefully before we get to the proposed budget phase, and maybe we can come back and discuss kind of what we're seeing.
Yeah, it's actually it's very much our CIP amendment process of just reviewing sort of that spending, and we expect it was a big commitment we had in terms of to the committee and others around having that 2 years under our belt to really look back at. So I think that's exactly right.
And the committee really appreciates you being here this evening and bringing this forward and inviting us to be able to give comments back. So thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you all. Appreciate you making the time.
All right, if there are no other questions, we'll go ahead and move on
Okay.
to program updates. Sam.
All right, let me pull open just the document here. I have to guide some of this. One, we were just before you all 2 weeks ago, so I will acknowledge there's probably not going to be too much new that you're going to be hearing this evening, but there are certainly a few things. And so I'll just start at the top, and I think overall this hopefully the rest of the agenda in terms of being able to move quicker. But overall, we've got one. I'll just start with our community grants. We're still out in our community grant cycle. It does close, our annual community grant cycle does close May 27th. And so we're getting to that tail end here where folks are putting the finishing touches on their applications and asking their final questions. So we're in that home stretch. And so I just want to acknowledge that. But while I acknowledge that, our last community grant round, which we awarded in November of 2025, this is a thing we've been trying to tighten over the past 2 years, but we're now at least over half of those grant agreements have now been executed past the city auditor and signed, where we have resources flowing out to those grantees. And so that has been at times we've had a duration where we've had some grants take over a year to get executed. And so we've been trying to shorten that time frame. And so we're already at half, and I expect the last minute really push to get as many of the remainder executed before the end of the fiscal year. Not that there's a firm cutoff there, but that's a prime goal for ours. Related though, bringing us back to the current community grant round, just note that we are beginning to recruit external panelists. And so you should get an email here. If you have not already, you should get an email within the next couple of days asking you all if any of you all are interested in serving on a grant review panel to let us know. So, and those reviews will be taking place likely around July, August is when we expect those reviews to be happening and all of those meetings to take place. We did last week, or actually a couple of weeks ago now, we did, or last week, we closed our first capacity building cohort application. So this was part of strategic program 10 in the climate investment plan. And this is a two-phase application. There's a pre-application and there's gonna be a full application, but as part of the pre-application, we received 69 applications from nonprofits that are seeking to be part of the capacity building cohort. So this will ultimately be a cohort of about 8 to 10 organizations. And so they're going to be moving on. We're doing the pre-application review, and we'll invite a subset of those back to submit full applications here shortly. And then related to that work, there was an RFP for a request for proposals that we put out last summer that we had to redo in February of this year in order to bring on service providers for providing a range of services, whether it's financial consulting, whether it is board development support, communication support, strategy support, just a range of support that we need to have for our organizations, particularly our more nascent organizations that are getting into the space to shore up. And so we've closed at least those requests for proposals out, and we have a few different scopes, but we've made award decisions for at least 7 of those scopes, and we're moving into the contracting phase for those service providers. And those will work directly with our capacity building cohort, as well as our broader portfolio of nonprofits are working with us as we need to provide support to them. And so we're just excited about that moving forward. And that's really a new body of work that we've been doing in piecemeal, but that we've created into a more formal program. And then just a positive announcement in terms of just growing our capacity. Next week, we'll be bringing on a couple new folks, but notably, we'll be bringing on Andrea Caudle, who's going to be joining us, coming over from the Port of Portland to lead up our commercial buildings program area. So that's going to be, we're splitting up some of our programs just as the scale of the work has grown. And so she'll be joining us starting next week. And so that's just really exciting to start organizing the work and making sure that we're able to balance the work across our teams. In addition, it's not on here, but I'll just note, and this is a program connected to Energy Trust. We believe the Portland Solar Access for All program, which is one of the Collaborating for Climate Action grants, is going to be launching publicly in June. And so that's something we're just really excited to see and track and see that really great work happening there. Now, last week I gave folks just an update on the e-bike rebate program. So the first selection happened about a few days before your last meeting. I think it happened on Monday, the 27th, where we selected about, through a lottery, about a little bit over 1,200 rebates. And so since that selection, and this is just, what folks get is they get about, it's about like 8 days in order to provide the full documentation that they need around their income validation, all the things they need. And so they go through that step. About a little bit over, almost about 1,000 of those folks submitted all that documentation. And then those that completed that get their rebates. And so we've already had 236 rebates from that cycle just 2 weeks ago already get redeemed at bike stores. So we already have 236 e-bikes out. We expect over the coming weeks, probably the balance of those. So it's just the excitement's there. Folks are really just leveraging that opportunity really quickly. And that says something, going from getting the notice that you're getting awarded a rebate to getting all your documentation in to going into a store, getting your e-bike and all your equipment. And so we're excited to see that program just humming along really well. In a few weeks' time, starting on June 1st, the adaptive program part of that program that's going to be focused on more accessibility will be launching. And so that's a uniquely designed program. And so that'll launch on June 1st. And then we're gonna keep things going where we'll have another pull on May 25th will be our next selection date for additional rebates from that program. And then we're doing a lot of other activities in that area. Notably, we'll be doing demos and application sign-up support for the program as part of Sunday Parkways, both in North Portland and East Portland, and a range of other community events, Good in the Hood, Cinco de Mayo, Electrify PDX. So that's just, we're making sure we're getting out there as the summer weather comes up, and it gives us an opportunity on e-bikes. And I'll just acknowledge that we have our first Sunday Parkways, which is one of the programs that we provide financial support to through our Bureau of Transportation. First Sunday Parkways is happening this Sunday, and our staff will be posted up in the Gabriel Park neighborhood. Okay. And then I made this note in the last meeting, and so this is my last update here, but I made this note and I'm just acknowledging it because we did provide external communications about this just in the past couple of weeks here, but it's just to know our Cooling Portland program is on track to meet our 25,000 unit goal this summer. This will be the final summer of the program, and so what we're doing here is we're calling out and being really clear that we essentially anyone that is seeking to get a cooling unit has until June 30 deadline to apply for a cooling unit. And we hope to get to everyone, but certainly be prioritizing recipients based on those heat vulnerabilities. So this is as part of the winding down the program as we've launched up our energy friendly homes and many of our other programs. But that'll be a moment of celebration that we'll certainly take up later this summer. And so I think that's largely it, knowing that I know we were just here 2 weeks ago.
Yes, Tracy.
Yeah, Sam, these are a lot of exciting updates in spite of the fact that we just met a couple of weeks ago. So thank you so much for these. I would love to be able to have some of this information in written form so that I can digest it a little better. But these are all super exciting. 2 questions for the accessible Portland e-bike offer. Can you share the number that we have, earmarked to support those who are differently abled?
Let me follow up with you, Tracy, on that. I don't know if there's been a set aside allocation for that or how that part, so I can follow up on that. I don't have that off the top of my head.
I didn't know if it was within that, 1,500 or if it's broader than that. But it's just really an exciting expansion to the e-bike rebate program. So thank you.
Accessibility was something that I know the team thought a lot and really hard about in terms of how do we make sure that the opportunity isn't just obviously it's for those that, and so those that are not just able-bodied in the traditional form. And so there is a different program with a specific accessibility focused program partner that's supporting that because it's oftentimes custom build outs of bikes to support that. And so we can get you follow up with more information, but that program will launch on June 1st. So when we come back in June, we'll probably have some more information on that program. And certainly, obviously, as you'd expect, just it's designed to recognize the custom nature of each of those bikes that are delivered to folks.
Yeah, super exciting news there. The other question is around Cooling Portland. There's been so much great work that has been done through Cooling Portland, but as you know, we're still impacted by climate change. And I do have concerns that the program, the great work that it's done, is potentially sunsetting. What is staff considering as the next level of opportunities to really support individuals in the city of Portland who are experiencing the impacts of really, really hot summers lately?
I'll start off and I'll then turn it over to my colleague James on that. I think just to start off and acknowledge, I think even, the birth of the program certainly came out of the 2021 heat dome and sort of sense of, we've got an amazing resource with PCEF. How do we respond to what played out here, given we're clearly in a different climate paradigm than we'd understood in the past, and that having cooling is no longer just a luxury, but a core necessity. And so that's sort of where we started and recognizing, but at the same end, I'll acknowledge we always certainly saw the program as a stopgap in that we always wanted to move and expected to move to more durable solutions as we scaled up our work. And so some of the work, such as what we're doing with our energy friendly homes program, is some of that. It isn't everything. And right. So that's some of the work that's happening in the single family home space or single unit home space. There's also our work that we're doing with existing and new affordable housing to make sure that all of those have high efficiency heat pumps as part of those in there. So there are other programs, but want to just acknowledge that the pace. We were able to install 25,000 portable heat pump cooling units and deliver in a pretty quick way some immediate relief and creating cool rooms in folks' homes so we could have that refuge. And we know there's data at the county where folks are saying we feel better prepared for heat now. They're seeing that they're seeing more folks feel better prepared for heat in the years that we've administered this program. So I just and so I named the scale or our ability to move fast on those, whereas the deeper investments that we want to go towards take more time, that we're not going to be able to hit those kind of numbers on those deeper investments for a while. And so I'm going to turn it to James to fill in. I think I just want to name, I think it was in some ways always the expectation that we were going to start at this place, knowing that there's still going to be some unmet need. We think we've made a pretty big dent in that need. But that's maybe what I got to share there. I'll turn it to James because I probably spoke too much already here. James.
No, it's all good. Yeah, and I think that framing of this being kind of a medium-term program that wasn't intended to last forever, and that, we have met a significant amount of need. Just as kind of an anecdote, going into this spring and summer, we actually had very few people on a wait list. Whereas in past years, there was a lot of carryover from the previous year of people who weren't able to be served that then we served the following year. And this year there really wasn't that wait list of recipients. And so we do have, about 4,000 units left to distribute to meet the 25,000 unit goal. And our approach is to make sure that people know about this program and the opportunity window that still is here for the next month and a half or so. And so if we do see a spike in, people requesting units, then we can make sure that we're prioritizing the people who need it the most, people who are over 60 years old, people who live alone, and people with medical conditions. And so that's always been the prioritization for the program. But now that, it is sunsetting, that's going to be more important as we allocate the remaining units and our community partners install them. And then, the other piece I will note that's still in development is an opportunity for us to ensure that over the coming couple years that we can continue to troubleshoot and maintain. And if people have questions about how to service them, that we have the resources at 311 and with community partners to be able to provide those services so that the units that we have installed can continue to serve people. And so that is another piece that we're still building out. And then as we get to the next climate investment plan, I think we'll have the opportunity to evaluate this program as a whole and see what elements of access to cooling equipment we might want to replicate or build on in the future. So
I appreciate that. Thank you, both Sam and James.
yeah.
All right, nice job, everyone. Let's go ahead and move to our next topic. Next slide, please.
Sam, I wanted to know, do I have an opportunity to share updates here, or should I wait?
Go for it, please.
So right here is fine. Yep, sorry about that.
That's okay, Dr. Moses. I'd like to share with my fellow committee members a forward of an email that Sam sent to both co-chair D'Angelo Moaning and I last week, Thursday or Friday, I believe it might have been Thursday evening, from Charles Boyle with the Portland Trailblazers. And it was a request to look for some time with the PCEF committee to discuss the Moda Center renovations. And I just wanted an opportunity to really explore with committee members. They're looking for a time within the next month, and I would love to know from the committee members, how would you like to be engaged on the Moda Center? What he shared is that they're bringing on an architect soon, and that they'd like to have time to kind of present some conceptual ideas to the committee and get some feedback and really any additional ideas that we may have in the areas of energy conservation, transportation, and community resilience. So since we had a little bit of time on this agenda, I thought I'd kind of jump in, Sam, I'm sorry, but to kind of get from the committee their thoughts on this.
Andre.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that, Tracy. And yeah, happy to, if other committee members are open, holding the space, to have folks talk to us. I definitely have a lot of thoughts on the topic, and so would be interested in a conversation. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you so much, Andre. I see Megan's hand up.
Yeah. Yeah, thanks, Tracy. I also have thoughts always. And, you know, on the one hand, I'm glad to be asked for our role here. And on the other hand, I'm a little sensitive to this being that, like, we're trying to set up a process where we hear things in a cycle and a calendar of reviews. So I'm a little sensitive to making any exceptions to that. But if we already hear from them, I'll tell you what I'd want to hear. And one is, you know, we went through a really extensive process to develop our climate investment plan, and we've been holding that as our North Star for the last 2.5 years, and we're planning to hold it through 2028. And I was just pulled up our CIP, and page 11 and 12 have the questions we evaluated all those programs through. And I think any proposal that comes before us again should have to answer those same questions. And they're, you know, they're on there, so I'll just name the words, but benefits to frontline communities, community leadership, implementation feasibility, climate impact and GHG reductions, and accountability mechanisms to ensure that communities of color, low income, and other priority communities benefit. So I would want to hear, you know, a lot about those things. And a couple other things, you know, we also have allocated all of our money. And so I would be curious to hear from city staff and bureau leader and elected officials about if, like, where money would come from to shift anything. So that may not be from Moda Center folks themselves, that might come more from city staff. But, you know, I am again staunchly defend our funding for community programs. So, and really we heard these great updates about a lot of programs underway. So I'm just not sure. I would want that to be part of the conversation. Like, all of our money's allocated. So why are we hearing about a new program? That a couple other things. If we continue that conversation, I also would want to hear from our elected officials and city leaders, subject matter experts on this, and I'd want to hear from community in the neighborhood, like in Northeast Portland, particularly, you know, that neighborhood, the Moda Center itself. There's a long legacy there of redlining and urban renewal and gentrification. So I'd want to hear from folks like Albina Vision Trust and other Black-led orgs in there, and how they're seeing any connections from PCEF, particularly around the community benefits side. So there's some thoughts there. And then I'll try to be brief here. Another is, I think it's part of the questions on 11 and 12 on the feasibility, but, you know, I think there is an opportunity for the public-owned event venue that Moda Center is to possibly be, you know, the greenest, I'll say WNBA home, but event venue in the country, right? Like, there is a possibility, and maybe PCEF would have a role in that, but I'd want to hear the exact numbers behind the role that PCEF would be the value add for the greenhouse gas emissions reduction, the HVAC side, et cetera. Like, what are the detailed numbers? And then I also want it to be a collective dialogue where, I'm glad that's why they're approaching us. So, but, you know, I'd want to bring community members and staff and subject matter experts into that to imagine this as more than just an HVAC upgrade. If PCEF were to fund it now or in our next CIP cycle, which I'm more open to that idea, although I know that doesn't match the timing that I've been reading about in the news. But, you know, what about connecting this to microgrids? What about using the cost savings to benefit Black and low-income residents in the neighborhood? What about turning the Moda Center into a resilience hub during our next extreme heat and smoke event? I don't know that that's the best idea for it, but I want to hear that being considered. And then you mentioned transportation, and I'm glad to know that this isn't only a clean energy. Our PCEF program has a bigger purview around GHG reductions, and that does include things like decarbonizing our transportation modes, and includes tree planting and depaving. And I'd love to see a broader look at what, and of course, all the community benefits. So I'd love to hear a broader look at all that. And then, yeah, I think that covers, that's a lot of things.
No, that's great.
I'm a detailed person, Tracy.
Indeed. No, I appreciate that. That's a lot of good, robust information to have staff share back.
Thanks. I'll stop and let you add more, Tracy. Robin, I see your hand up, and Andrea, if that sparks thoughts, I'd love to hear more from you too, especially on the transportation side, since you're our expert.
Yeah, thanks for the opportunity and the heads up. We kind of all knew that this day was coming, so kind of, might as well, approach this. And I first, 10 times everything, Megan had just said. She was very articulate. She kind of ran through my list. I just want to kind of highlight a few things. For me is, I've read, we've all read the papers, or we heard rumors about what might happen, and net zero this and blah 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 blah, and that's all cool. But to me, what's really important, more important, or just as important, is the community piece of it, right? And PCEF, right? It's Portland Clean Energy Community Benefits Fund. So I know the CB is not part of PCEF, but it's a very critical part of PCEF for at least me, and I think a lot of us on the committee. So that almost needs to be, for me, front and center, or at least kind of on par with it. And I think it would be nice if they've had conversations with some of the community organizations about their approaches, their thoughts, and whatnot. A few that Megan rattled off before they approach us. I think coming up with concepts, with that input from the beginning, makes the plans more realistic. And instead of we know what will happen if it doesn't happen. It's something's going to leak to the press, and all of a sudden we're boxed into a certain area. So I would encourage to have a initial round of conversations with community, and get their input before coming to us. And the last thing I'll say is that way back when when we were a small $60 million fund, when this first we found out about these surpluses, and we developed other kind of various responses to deploy the extra funding. I made a comment one day that says, this is great. It's fantastic that we have all this extra money, but that's not always going to be the case, right? There will be times when the money has to be pulled back, and not that money has to be pulled back, but it goes to what Megan said, is that this money doesn't grow on trees. We've allocated all this money already. It's been approved by council or the previous councils. It has its thorough vetting, and if they want to shift the money, we need to know where it's coming from. We deployed a lot of resources to other initiatives, other bureaus and agencies, if money needs to be pulled back, everything that we provide additional funding to, I think, is on the table in terms of where this money could be coming from. So I know that's a hard conversation. That's not my problem. Whoever's proposing this, that's their challenge. But I think we need to be mindful of where this money originally came from, and understanding that the good comes with the bad in terms of budget allocations. So that's all I have to say. Thank you.
No, I appreciate it. And this is really confirming. D'Angelo and I did have an opportunity to chat, and essentially what the three of you have shared so far, really reflects exactly where D'Angelo and I landed on this. And so in his absence, I want to share that we too thought we were just one of many entities that should be considered in these conversations to have input to help shape what this looks like. It's not just the PCEF committee. So, with that said, Sam, I did want to just make sure fellow committee members had an opportunity to kind of know the gist of the ask. And, I don't know if we have enough context at this point to take back to the Blazers with what those next steps would be. With the ask being in 1 month, I realized that this broader workshopping of what could be proposed is maybe not feasible. So I will leave it to staff to really think about what this timeline reasonably should look like for the next steps. But, the committee has weighed in, and we've shared our thoughts on this.
Thank you, Tracy. I appreciate that, and I appreciate hearing from committee members. I know I saw a couple of hands, and I want to make sure I'm not stepping over anyone, but I think we'll circle back with this, and we'll relay and communicate this to the folks on the Moda Center conversation, so that we can conceptually figure out what makes sense based on where they are, and sort of the asks that you all have made here, so that it can feel like a meaningful conversation for both of you all.
Much
Beautiful.
appreciated, Sam. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and obviously, Tracy, and I'll check back in with you and D'Angelo just to share how that's going, share how that thinking is going.
So I would like to suggest that we take a break for 5 minutes, that we come back at 7:10 in order to continue the meeting. Is that all right with everyone? Thumbs up. I see. Okay, fantastic. We'll be back at 7:10. Welcome back, everyone. All right, we are going to now jump into the city budget discussion.
So in many ways, this, folks, was really a continuation, intended to be a continuation of the conversation that started last week, really to give the committee an opportunity to have a discussion amongst yourselves. We're here certainly to answer questions. I think I want to acknowledge that with the budget conversations going on, I don't know that we were able to get as much information I think that folks had hoped, but we wanted to at least give some space in this moment to certainly answer questions, and then give you all space to have a discussion. And so what I'll start with, just as a reflection for folks, is I'll start with just orienting folks to where overall our budget is shows up. And so again, for folks that are chiming in, we have our BPS budget, which is primarily focused on our administrative staffing to administer the program, as well as our community grants, the Collaborating for Climate Action grants externally that we administer, and then many of the externally managed strategic programs, such as the e-bike rebate program, energy-friendly homes, and then some of our multifamily affordable housing work, and so forth. And then our internal BPS climate programs, which is a strategic program. And then again on our budget, and that sum totals to about 204 million for the next budget year. And again, that captures our next round of community grants as well. And then within our budget, we also have our other expenditures that are focused on administration that are outside of the bureau. So for our chief sustainability officer, funding for the city budget office for 311, which provided some support for some of our programming. This is where we capture some of the funding to the revenue division, do the collection of the funds, as well as the transfer of the interest. And so that sums up to about 32 million. Obviously, the vast majority of that is situated with that interest transfer to the general fund. And then the last of which to the right side of this diagram is the bureau budgets that are associated for the coming fiscal year that are associated with implementing several strategic programs. And so what you see here is next fiscal year, there's about 154 million budgeted through city bureaus that will be administering a range of strategic programs. And so this is organized by bureau as opposed to the strategic programs, but this just captures that sum here there. So I'll stop there, turn to the committee to so we can answer questions as best as we can and see where we go from there.
Thank you, Sam. Robin, go right ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Lots of numbers here. Got a question about the Collaborating for Climate Action. If I remember correctly, these were kind of public-private partnerships. So it's a nonprofit collaborating with a government agency. So we have, 53.4 million. Is that 53.4 million, is the agency portion of Collaborating for Climate Action reflected in that 53.4 million, or is that part of the 154.1, or am I completely mixing it up?
They're separate. So one, there's no double counting in there. What I is captured in that 53.4, that's part of the BPS budget externally. It's most likely going to be associated with the TriMet. That's external to the city, so that would be coming out of that. TriMet had a collaborative. There's about a 55 million grant to 82nd Avenue work to TriMet. And so these are, just because it's 55 million, that doesn't mean it's all going out of next fiscal year. So the sum here is going to be smaller because it's what we will project out for the next fiscal year. The school district, so Multnomah Educational Service District, was the umbrella group that came in for all the school districts, and they had about a $70 million Collaborating for Climate Action grant. We also had one with certainly Energy Trust, as well as then the Bonneville Environmental Foundation. And then to your point, Robin, then there are several others that fell in with either, for instance, Bureau of Transportation, the Sidewalks to Schools program, was another with Portland focused on Broadway corridor. And then there was another with Fleet and Facilities, and then one more with the Clean Industry Hub that BPS is managing. And that sits in that line that says 6.7 million there, and that does come out of the BPS.
Oh.
See that line right here? It's
Yeah,
right above the
no, I s-
204. So that's because BPS, we're funding some of the climate policy staff out of a strategic program.
Gotcha.
And then BPS actually administers the Clean Industry Hub Collaborating for Climate Action grant. So that's one of those, and that's coming out of that line for the next fiscal year.
Okay, thank you.
What other questions? Yes, Megan.
Thanks for this refresher and chance to dive in a little bit more. I don't know that you're going to have answers to my questions because they're mostly about the proposed changes from, the CIP to this. And Sammy alluded earlier that it hasn't been a long time and you've gone back and asked, but just, I guess, to get them out there. In the document you sent, some of my questions were around the changes. Now, I'm not sure where they line up on here. So I guess I'm trying to figure out where those are. They're just like embedded in that table on the right?
Yeah, and I think I know the question. These were related to the decision packages in the proposed budget. And so in the proposed budget, there is some programming that is proposed to be administered by Portland Solutions through the Public Environmental Management Office and the Impact Reduction Program. That's that 5.9 million. And so that, for instance, there is an instance where it's where essentially Portland Solutions is implementing strategic programs that were originally identified for Bureau of Environmental Services, so Strategic Program 22, as well as Bureau of Transportation, Strategic Programs 31 and 32. So they're essentially taking on and subcontracting to those entities to administer that programming. That's at least the intent there.
I see. I guess some follow-up questions I have is it would be really helpful for there to be a slide or a visual showing what the actual changes are from the CIP to this, or our intended, what the changes are. And I had kind of drafted it up in an email to you. I think you had it in a written document, but now on this slide, I'm a little, not thinking that's a little hard for me to track. And then the other thing is I am curious to hear about whether that still meets the intent of what the original strategic program was envisioning around there. So, because I remember that one being around bioswale maintenance and et cetera. And so what I read and what was sent seemed to be much broader in nature than that. And so curious about that. And then another question I have, and I don't know where this goes in this table, maybe it's under the Parks and Rec funding, or maybe it's PBOT, but there was one about some lighting investments. And I wanted to know more about that. Is it an energy efficiency measure? Is that the relationship to GHG, safer walking? I guess I just wanted to know more about that. And I think there were some impacts to PBOT. I don't know if I understand them based on this slide. So I guess that's just a question. And another thing that's not totally up here is I think I read in the report you sent, or the analysis you sent, something about a laundry program from Ground Score. Love Ground Score, but I was curious if we could hear more about what the connection to the PCEF program is around energy efficiency, or greenhouse gas reduction, community benefit, that kind of thing. So I don't know how those track onto these tables exactly, because I don't always know which programs nest under which bureaus.
I think there's probably work we can do to work with the budget office and improve that presentation as we move forward. At this point, looking to the next fiscal year, I think that I will just acknowledge there is a challenge here in that the narratives that come through the decision packages that are developed for ultimately council to consider don't all have it's difficult to fully evaluate that alignment just because of the level of detail that are in the decision packages. And so a lot of as when we write our strategic programs in the climate investment plan, there are multiple pages where we're getting into the detail around the what, the how, the outcomes, the goals, the measures, and so forth. And so I think where we're left at this point is staff ultimately, should those proposals advance, staff working with, our staff working with the folks at the Public Environmental Management Office, Portland Solutions, to ensure that the funds align with those CIP programs for BES. So there would be that work to say, okay, before the work begins, let's make sure that they align. But as I understand it right now, Meg, the shift it shouldn't be a shift in strategic. It shouldn't be a change to strategic programs. My understanding is there's no intention to change the climate investment plan. It's really having slightly different direction in terms of the implementers. So instead of BES implementing some of that work and cleaning out biospills, it'd be Portland Solutions doing it. So that's I would acknowledge that's my thing. Obviously, the it's going to come down to ultimately on the other side, how is the work manifesting and showing up? And that'll be an important opportunity for certainly, if it makes sense for us to follow up then as we get to the other side. But but it is just the nature of what we get this budget phase is, it's limited and it's fast, and so we're left with squaring it up on the other side.
Thank you, Sam. Any other questions?
Do have one. Sam, there's probably an opportunity for us to just have kind of, as Megan has alluded to, maybe just the trade-offs that have happened for this one. I think that would be really important. But I'd like to know what is the committee's role here? What is the ask of us? Is this for an inform? Is it for us to agree? I mean, I'd just like to have clarity around our role here.
Yeah, I think at this stage, I think at this stage, this isn't informed because there isn't a change to the climate investment plan. That said, right now, the next agenda item is going to be talking about an evaluation subcommittee. And that'll be the place where, it's really taking sort of where you see these conversations that here, and as we get into looking back at performance over the past year and moving forward, what are the elements that you all want to dig in and evaluate as you think about, to some of the points raised on any one of our strategic programs? What are the things you want to think about either honing in, revising, getting more clarity on, whether it's on the outcomes, whether it's on the performance and the spend down? And so I think this ultimately should feed into that opportunity to revisit the CIP on an annual basis to see how do you want to change things? Are you getting, do you feel like you need more clarity in a program or a different set of outcomes to really understand how it's performing? Or is there an opportunity to shift resources? And so this is at this moment, there isn't any intended changes to the climate investment plan as far as I'm told here. And so the opportunity here is to inform, but then subsequently for you all to take that into that evaluation that'll take place later this year.
Yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks, Sam.
Any other questions? Great conversation. Okay, let's go to the next item. Next slide, please. Appoint evaluation subcommittee for CIP annual review.
I'll turn it to James here.
Great.
Yeah, thank you, Sam. And so we're actually not going to appoint a evaluation subcommittee because we don't have a quorum. But I'll just walk through just a couple slides. And we've talked about the annual review process a little bit in here, and we presented more of this full content in the last meeting. Go ahead and go to the next slide. So just as a reminder, we're starting really right now as staff, gathering information and providing some summary content to be able to help inform the subcommittee as we look to convene them. And so we're looking to convene the first subcommittee in June. And the new approach, because we can't appoint in this meeting, would be to have you all as a committee appoint that subcommittee in June and then have a meeting hopefully fairly soon after that. I did want to share and very grateful to Megan and Andre for volunteering to serve on this committee or on the subcommittee. And so we still could have more if there's another committee member that also wants to join, but the minimum is that we have two subcommittee members to form a subcommittee. So we have effectively met that if you all desire to appoint them in the next meeting. And so this will be the general schedule where we'll focus first on the 19 strategic programs related to city bureaus. And then in the fall, going into from August to November, we'll do a full review of the climate investment plan along with the other strategic programs and grants and the rest of it. So this is a very general timeline. This will be broken out into more detail as we move forward. And go to the next slide, which is just, next steps. We now do have two subcommittee members, as I mentioned, who've expressed interest, and we'll be working with those to, to schedule the meetings as we get into June and through the summer. Again, recognizing that folks will have summer plans that we'll have to work around. We'll mostly have 1-hour meetings with the opportunity, if needed, to also be able to have longer meetings so we can really dive into content. And we'll take our cue as staff from the subcommittee and the information that you want more detail on. So I think that's pretty much it, because we're not taking any action for right now. But thanks again to Megan and Andre for stepping up.
And thank you, James, and thank you, Meg and Andre for being willing. I think what I'll just add is we're circling back. We are still waiting to get a date, and I know Tracy's expressed and D'Angelo's a lot of interest in landing our date for City Council to appoint the remaining committee members, so that we can get this body back to a full committee again here soon. So I think that'll be a ripe conversation with the new folks to see who's willing to jump on board, because it would be a really good learning opportunity to get really familiar and intimate with all of our programs for some of the new members, and maybe jumping into the deep end, but in all the best ways. So that'll I think that's out there, and that's, I know, follow-up action from your last committee meeting where you all took action on recommending your new folks. So stay tuned. We'll hopefully get an update here shortly on those appointments.
Thank you so much, Sam. Andre and then Robin.
Oh, go ahead, Robin. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I didn't know if you had a question or
Sorry.
a comment. Robin, go right ahead.
Sorry, my finger's going. I do have a question. If we can go back one slide. About the timeline, and my question is, there are a lot of forces that are in play around this, right? And we knew from last time that council members wanted to be more engaged. We have this kind of MOTA thing kind of looming in the background, and just there's just I guess my question is, are all these dynamics, could they change the schedule or how we kind of do things? And the other context is that I think last time when we tried to do this, we tried to set a precedent or a process that we could replicate year over year, and we kind of found out that that didn't really work. So I'm just kind of, I guess my general question is, how chaotic is this process going to be, if that's the right word?
Sam?
I was waiting to see if James wanted to chime in.
James.
I can chime in too, but
So I think maybe I'll speak at the large level. Yes, we're always gonna have things coming our way, and I think certainly you all know that there'll be a conversation that'll begin here shortly related to the MOTA Center. I think we're going to try to do our best in terms of communicating back to leadership and ultimately council, so that we can do a better job of getting in front of them early on, so they have an understanding. I mean, equally, this is a two-way street, and them understanding what is the realm of feasibility of what we're expecting to do in this process that is realistic to what we can also do in the last 2 years of the climate investment plan. So I think our hope is to have more of that communication, because I think where things just in earnest went sideways was, Robin, I actually think as a subcommittee last year, you all did your job and got us there with the recommendation in December. I think the challenge was this was new for this council body. And so that is where things took a lot longer once we got to council. And so I think that's where our work is coming ahead. I think if we can keep to this part of it, I think, and manage those expectations, frankly, on both, I mean, both on staff being reasonable, what we can reasonably dive into. We have more information this time, and equally hearing from Meg and Andre how we can pull you in ways that are best for you both. So I feel good about. I feel that there's going to inherently be trade-offs, and it's going to be a constant work to figure out how do we get to this place where we make this regular, because that's what we need to do, knowing that starting in spring of 2027, we'll begin talking about the next climate investment plan and beginning that process. So I think it's for us, we're going to try to land it, but I think a big part of work is going to certainly be with council, but I feel really comfortable about where we stand as relates to just recycling and learning from our lessons learned and applying it here with you all.
And I don't have much to add, and I see that we're now over time, so I'll leave it there.
Oh gosh, a minute long. It's okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. Okay, so we have gone through our agenda. I want to say thank you so very much for your participation this evening. It's been fabulous. I would like to adjourn this meeting at 7:32. Thank you.